Hi and welcome back to Reddit Whispers. Is my wife being a bit too dramatic? That's the question I've been turning over in my head for what feels like an eternity, a constant, dull ache right behind my eyes. It's a question that tastes like regret and smells like the stale air in a house where words have been replaced by silence. We've been married for 5 years, a milestone that should feel like a victory, a testament to our survival in this crazy world. But honestly, it feels more like we've just been serving a sentence, marking off days on a calendar with a sense of weary resignation. We have a daughter, our beautiful, bright-eyed little girl, and she's the only thing that makes any of this bearable, the single point of light in an ever-encroaching darkness. But even her existence is tinged with the bitterness of the conflict that has defined our marriage. My wife, you see, she hates my mother. And when I say hate, I'm not using the word lightly. It's a deep, visceral loathing, a raw wound that never seems to heal, and it's been poisoning everything slowly, insidiously from the very beginning. I guess it's a common trope, the warring wife and mother-in-law, the stuff of sitcoms and tired jokes. But when you're living it, when you're the man caught in the crossfire, there's nothing funny about it. It's a special kind of hell, a constant juggling act where you're doomed to drop every ball, to disappoint everyone you love. The genesis of this animosity, this heartbreak, was our daughter's birth. My wife went through a hell of a postpartum period, a dark, suffocating fog that I, in my ignorance, couldn't fully comprehend at the time. I tried, of course. I brought her tea and held her when she cried, but I couldn't penetrate the wall of her despair. And my mother, well, my mother made it 1,000 times worse. She was there ostensibly to help, but her presence was a constant source of friction, a relentless questioning of my wife's every decision. Are you sure you should be holding the baby like that? Is she getting enough milk? In my day, we did it this way. Each question was a tiny pinprick, a subtle undermining of my wife's fragile confidence as a new mother. My wife wanted to name our daughter something unique, a name that held special meaning for her. My mother, of course, had an opinion. "No, that's not a good name," she declared, as if her word was law. I know, she has no right. It's our child, our decision." But these small things, these constant erosions of my wife's autonomy, they built up over time like a dam slowly cracking under the pressure. The taunts, the little digs, the comparisons to my sister, they were relentless. If my wife bought a new dress, my mother would make a point of buying my sister a better one. It was petty, it was childish, but it was also incredibly effective at making my wife feel small, insignificant. The financial strain of a new baby didn't help matters. We were living in a small rental at the time, dreaming of buying our own place, of making a real estate investment for our future. We were working with a realtor, trying to improve our credit score, but it was a constant struggle. My mother, instead of being supportive, would make comments about our financial situation, about the risks we were taking. It was another form of betrayal, another way to make my wife feel like she wasn't good enough. We both had jobs, but with the cost of childcare and our mounting debt, we were barely making ends meet. My wife's health insurance covered most of the postpartum care, but there were still so many out-of-pocket expenses. It was a time of immense stress, a true test of our survival as a couple. And through it all, my mother's presence was a constant, grating irritant. So now, after 5 years of this slow-burning war, my wife has reached her breaking point. She wants to cut them out completely. No more visits, no more phone calls, nothing. We live in a different country from my parents, which has been a saving grace in many ways. But my mother is planning a trip next year to visit my sister, who happens to live in the same city as us. My wife has made it clear, in no uncertain terms, that she does not want my mother in our home. She has drawn a line in the sand, and I'm standing right on top of it. My male ego, my innate desire to fix things, to find a harmonious solution, is screaming at me to do something, anything. I'm the kind of guy who wants everyone to be happy, who avoids conflict at all costs. I want to keep my wife happy, she's my priority, my everything. But the thought of telling my mother she's not welcome, of being rude and aggressive, it fills me with a sense of dread. The cultural expectation, the filial duty, it's a heavy weight to bear. And so my wife has given me an ultimatum. Choose me or your mother. And of course I choose her. I will always choose her. But I don't want it to come to this. I don't want to be forced to sever my relationship with my own mother, as flawed and difficult as she may be. I've been juggling this for 5 years, this impossible, soul-crushing balancing act, and I'm at a loss. What do I do? How do I navigate this minefield without causing irreparable damage to one of the most important relationships in my life? This isn't just about my wife's feelings anymore. It's about the very foundation of our family, the future we are trying to build for our daughter. The constant stress of this situation is taking a toll on my own mental health, on our finances, on our ability to move forward. The dream of that real estate investment seems further away than ever, our credit score a constant reminder of our precarious financial situation. We are in a state of perpetual survival, not living, but simply getting by. The sacrifice my wife is asking of me feels immense, a severing of roots that run deep. But the betrayal she feels from my mother is just as profound, a wound that refuses to close. I am caught in a web of regret, of things said and unsaid, of actions taken and not taken. I yearn for some kind of redemption, for a way to heal these fractured relationships, but I fear it may be too late. The debt of emotional pain is too high, the interest compounding with each passing day. The rental we live in feels less like a home and more like a battleground, the walls echoing with unspoken resentments. I've spoken to a realtor about our options, about the possibility of moving, of starting fresh somewhere new, but that feels like running away from the problem, not solving it. And with our current financial situation, the risk of taking on a new mortgage is a daunting one. My wife's health insurance is tied to her job, a job she hates but is afraid to leave because of the security it provides. We are trapped, not just by this family drama, but by the very structures of our lives. The heartbreak is not just mine, it's my wife's, it's my mother's, and ultimately it will be my daughter's if I can't find a way to break this cycle. I look at her innocent face, and I am filled with a fierce determination to protect her from this poison, to give her a childhood free from the bitterness and resentment that has consumed her parents. But how? How do I choose between the woman I love and the woman who gave me life? How do I navigate this impossible choice without losing a part of myself in the process? The weight of it all is crushing me, the constant anxiety a leaden cloak I can't seem to shrug off. The word dramatic echoes in my mind, a cruel and dismissive label for the very real pain my wife is experiencing. Is she being dramatic, or am I being willfully blind to the depth of her suffering, to the years of accumulated hurt that have finally pushed her to this extreme? Perhaps the real question is not about her drama, but about my own cowardice, my own inability to stand up and protect her from the person who is causing her so much pain. The betrayal, I realize with a sickening jolt, is not just my mother's, it's mine as well. I have been a passive observer, a peacekeeper who has kept the peace at the expense of his own wife's well-being. The regret is a bitter pill to swallow, but it's a necessary one if I am to find any path towards redemption. The path forward is shrouded in fog, but one thing is clear. I cannot continue to stand in the middle. I have to choose a side, and that side is with my wife, with the family we have created. The consequences of that choice are terrifying, the potential for heartbreak immense, but the cost of inaction is far greater. It is the very soul of my family that is at stake. The survival of my marriage depends on it. The sacrifice is one I must be willing to make. The rental agreement on our current apartment is up for renewal soon, a stark reminder that we are in a state of limbo, our future uncertain. The realtor I spoke to was sympathetic, but ultimately, he's in the business of selling houses, not solving marital disputes. The real estate market in our city is brutal, a constant reminder of our financial instability. Our credit score, which we have been working so hard to improve, feels like a fragile house of cards, ready to collapse at any moment. The investment we had hoped to make, a small property that would give us some security, now seems like a pipe dream. The debt we have accumulated, from student loans to credit card bills, is a constant source of anxiety, a heavy weight on our shoulders. My wife's health insurance is a golden handcuff, tying her to a job that drains her soul but provides the coverage we so desperately need. It's a vicious cycle, a trap that so many people in our generation find themselves in. The dream of a better life of financial freedom seems to be slipping further and further away, replaced by the grim reality of just trying to keep our heads above water. And this conflict with my mother, it's when I am beginning to understand that this is not just a personal issue, but a systemic one. The lack of affordable childcare, the rising cost of living, the stagnant wages, it all contributes to the pressure that is tearing our family apart. My mother, from her comfortable position of retirement, cannot possibly understand the daily struggles we face, the constant anxiety of living paycheck to paycheck. Her criticisms, her comparisons to my sister, they are not just petty slights, they are a complete lack of empathy for our situation. The betrayal is not just personal, it's generational. She represents a different time, a different set of values, a world where a single income could support a family and buying a house was not an impossible dream. My wife, on the other hand, is a product of this new reality, a reality of hustle and grind, of constant uncertainty. She is a fighter, a survivor, and she will not be made to feel small or inadequate by someone who has no understanding of her struggles. The ultimatum she has given me is not an act of drama, it's an act of self-preservation. It's a desperate plea for me to see her, to understand her, to stand with her against a world that seems determined to crush her spirit. The heartbreak of it all is that I have been so slow to see it, so caught up in my own desire for harmony that I have been deaf to her cries for help. The regret is a heavy burden, but it is also a catalyst for change. I must find a way to break free from this cycle of dysfunction, to create a new narrative for our family, one that is built on a foundation of mutual respect and understanding. It will not be easy. It will require difficult conversations, painful choices, and a willingness to confront the demons of the past. There will be sacrifice, there will be risk, and there will be no guarantee of a happy ending. But for the sake of my wife, for the sake of my daughter, for the sake of my own redemption, it is a risk I am willing to take. The path to healing begins with a single step, and that step is choosing my wife, unequivocally and without reservation. The rest will have to follow, one uncertain step at a time. The problem is, even though I've made the choice in my head, the execution feels like walking a tightrope over a canyon. On one side is the life I've built with my wife and child, a life that is fragile and fraught with financial and emotional challenges, but a life that is mine, ours. On the other side is my past, my mother, the woman who raised me, who, despite her flaws, I do love. The thought of severing that cord completely, of the inevitable heartbreak it will cause, is a daunting prospect. My mother isn't a monster. She's a product of her own upbringing, her own insecurities. Her constant comparisons between my wife and my sister, I suspect, stem from a deep-seated need to feel in control, to see her own daughter as a reflection of her own success. It's a twisted kind of love, but it's the only kind she knows how to give. But understanding her motivations doesn't excuse the pain she has caused. The postpartum period was a particularly vulnerable time for my wife, and my mother's actions, whether intentional or not, were a form of betrayal. It's a wound that has never properly healed, and every subsequent slight, every petty comment has been like rubbing salt in it. The issue of the name of our daughter, it seems so trivial in hindsight, but at the time, it was a battle for my wife's identity as a mother. It was a declaration that she would not be steamrolled, that she would not have her choices dictated to her. And I, in my desire to keep the peace, failed to back her up as strongly as I should have. The regret of that moment, and so many others like it, is a constant companion. The financial pressures we've been under have only exacerbated the situation. The dream of buying a house, of making a sound real estate investment, has become a symbol of our struggle for stability. Every conversation with our realtor about our credit score, about the daunting prospect of a mortgage, is a reminder of how far we are from our goals. We are stuck in this rental, a place that has never truly felt like home, the walls thin enough to hear our neighbors' arguments, a constant reminder of the discord in our own lives. The burden of our debt is a heavy one, a constant source of stress that seeps into every aspect of our lives. My wife's job with its precious health insurance has become a gilded cage. She dreams of starting her own business, of pursuing her passions, but the risk is too great. We are in survival mode, and survival doesn't leave much room for dreams. I've tried to explain all of this to my mother, to make her understand the pressures we are under, but it's like we're speaking different languages. She sees our struggles as a personal failing, a lack of discipline, a departure from the values she holds dear. She doesn't see the systemic forces at play, the economic realities of our generation. Her world is one of defined benefit pensions and affordable housing, a world that no longer exists for us. This is where the real heartbreak lies, in this unbridgeable gap between our two worlds. It's not just a conflict of personalities, it's a clash of generations, of values, of lived experiences. My wife's ultimatum, as harsh as it sounds, is a demand that I choose which world I belong to. Do I cling to the past, to the traditions and expectations of my mother's generation, or do I embrace the future, with all its uncertainty and challenges, with my wife and daughter by my side? The choice, when I frame it like that, becomes clearer, but no less painful. The sacrifice required is not just the potential loss of my relationship with my mother, but the shedding of a part of my own identity, the part that has always sought to please, to be the good son. But maybe that's what it means to be a husband and a father. Maybe it means making a conscious choice to prioritize the family you have created over the family you came from. It's a rite of passage, a painful but necessary step towards true adulthood. The path to redemption is not about fixing my mother or changing her. It's about changing myself. It's about finding the courage to set boundaries, to speak my truth, even if it causes conflict. It's about showing my wife through my actions that I am her partner, her ally, her unwavering support. The conversation with my mother will be the hardest I've ever had. I will have to be firm, to be clear, to not back down in the face of her inevitable anger and guilt tripping. I will have to explain that her visit next year will not include staying with us, that any interaction with my wife will have to be on my wife's terms. It will be a risk, a gamble with no guarantee of a positive outcome. But it's a risk I have to take. The survival of my marriage, the well-being of my daughter, the future of our family, it all hangs in the balance. The rental agreement is on my desk, a ticking clock, a reminder that we need to make a decision about our future, not just about where we live, but about how we live. The realtor can wait. The credit score can be rebuilt. The real estate investment can be postponed. The most important investment I can make right now is in my family. The debt I owe my wife is not financial, it's emotional, and it's time I started paying it back. The heartbreak of the past 5 years has been a heavy burden, but perhaps it can also be a catalyst for growth, for a deeper understanding of what it means to love, to commit, to build a life with someone. Is my wife being a bit too dramatic? Maybe. But maybe a little drama is exactly what we need to wake us up from this nightmare of quiet desperation and force us to finally confront the issues that have been tearing us apart. Maybe her ultimatum is not a threat, but a lifeline, a chance to pull ourselves out of the wreckage and start building something new, something stronger, something that is truly our own. The next chapter of our story is unwritten, and it's up to me to decide what it will be. Will it be a tragedy of missed opportunities and broken relationships, or will it be a story of redemption, of a man who finally learned what it means to be a husband and a father? I don't have all the answers, but I know where I need to start. I need to go to my wife, to look her in the eyes, and to tell her, with every fiber of my being, that I choose her. And then together, we will face whatever comes next. The road ahead is long and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I feel a flicker of hope. And that, I realize, is a feeling worth fighting for. The conversation with my mother is a looming storm cloud on the horizon, a confrontation I've been avoiding for 5 long years. But the ultimatum from my wife has finally forced my hand. Procrastination is no longer an option. The harmony I've been so desperately trying to maintain has been a facade, a fragile piece built on the foundation of my wife's silent suffering. The heartbreak of that realization is a bitter pill to swallow. I've been so focused on avoiding conflict with my mother that I've inadvertently created a deep and lasting conflict in my own marriage. The betrayal, I now see, was not just my mother's actions, but my inaction. My silence was a tacit endorsement of her behavior, a signal to my wife that her feelings were secondary to my mother's. The regret is a heavy weight, but it's also a powerful motivator. I can't change the past, but I can and must change the future. The first step is to have a frank and honest conversation with my wife, to acknowledge her pain, to validate her feelings, and to apologize for my own role in her suffering. It's not about placing blame, but about taking responsibility. I need her to know, without a shadow of a doubt, that I am on her side, that we are a team. We need to present a united front, to establish clear and unwavering boundaries with my mother. This is not about punishing my mother, but about protecting our family. It's about creating a safe and healthy environment for our daughter to grow up in, an environment free from the toxic undercurrents of resentment and manipulation. The financial pressures we face are a constant source of stress, but they also serve as a stark reminder of what we are fighting for. The dream of homeownership, of a secure future for our daughter, is a powerful incentive to get our lives in order. The conversations with the realtor about our credit score and the real estate market have been disheartening, but they have also been a wake-up call. We need to be more disciplined with our finances, to create a budget and stick to it, to tackle our debt head-on. This is not just about improving our financial situation, but about taking control of our lives, about empowering ourselves to make choices that are in our best interests. The rental we live in may not be our dream home, but it is our sanctuary, our safe space, and we have a right to decide who is and is not welcome in it. My mother's upcoming visit is the catalyst for this long-overdue conversation. I need to communicate to her, in a calm and respectful but firm manner, what our boundaries are. She will not be staying with us. Any time she spends with our daughter will be supervised, and any criticism or unsolicited advice directed at my wife will not be tolerated. There will be consequences for crossing these boundaries, and I need to be prepared to enforce them. This will undoubtedly be difficult. My mother is a master of manipulation, of playing the victim, of using guilt as a weapon. But I cannot allow myself to be drawn into her games. My loyalty is to my wife and daughter, and I will not compromise their well-being for the sake of keeping the peace with my mother. The risk of a complete breakdown in my relationship with my mother is real, and it's a risk that I have to be willing to take. The sacrifice is a painful one, but the alternative, the slow and certain erosion of my marriage, is far more terrifying. My redemption lies not in mending the relationship with my mother, but in strengthening the one with my wife. It's about rebuilding the trust that has been eroded, about creating a partnership based on mutual respect and unwavering support. It's about showing my wife, through my actions, that she is my priority, my queen, the center of my universe. The survival of our family depends on it. The ultimatum my wife gave me was not an act of drama, but an act of desperation, a cry for help from a woman who felt unheard and unsupported. I am grateful for that ultimatum, for the wake-up call it provided. It has forced me to confront the uncomfortable truths about myself and my family, to take a hard look at the man I have become and the man I want to be. The road ahead will not be easy. There will be tears, there will be anger, there will be moments of doubt and despair. But there will also be the opportunity for growth, for healing, for a deeper and more authentic love. The heartbreak of the past has paved the way for a more hopeful future, a future where our family is not defined by conflict and resentment, but by love, resilience, and a shared commitment to creating a life of meaning and purpose. The conversation with my wife was a turning point. For the first time, I truly listened, without trying to problem solve or defend my mother. I just listened. And I heard the years of accumulated pain, the frustration, the feeling of being utterly alone in her struggle. The heartbreak in her voice was palpable, a raw and honest expression of the betrayal she had felt, not just from my mother but from me. The regret washed over me in waves, a suffocating tide of shame and self-recrimination. But in the midst of that pain, there was also a glimmer of hope. My wife, for the first time in a long time, saw a crack in my armor of denial, a willingness to acknowledge her reality. It was a small step, but it was a step in the right direction. We talked for hours, late into the night, the rental apartment that had so often felt like a prison cell transforming into a space of confession and connection. We talked about the postpartum period, about the constant undermining of her confidence, about the petty comparisons to my sister. We talked about the financial strain, the stress of our debt, the feeling of being trapped in a cycle of survival. We talked about our dreams, the real estate investment that had become a symbol of a life that felt just out of reach, the desire to provide a stable and secure future for our daughter. And we talked about my mother. I told my wife that I was ready to set boundaries, to present a united front, to finally, after 5 long years, put her first. The relief in her eyes was a sight to behold, a balm to my own aching soul. We decided to write down the boundaries together, a tangible and concrete expression of our shared commitment. No unannounced visits, no unsolicited advice, no negative comments about my wife or our parenting choices. Any violation of these boundaries would result in a period of no contact. It was a radical step, a complete rewriting of the rules of engagement with my mother, and it was terrifying. But it was also incredibly empowering. For the first time, we were taking control of our narrative, refusing to be passive victims of my mother's dysfunction. The conversation with my mother was as difficult as I had anticipated. I called her the next day, my heart pounding in my chest, my wife sitting beside me, holding my hand for support. I explained our decision calmly and clearly, without anger or accusation. I told her that we loved her but that we needed to prioritize our own family to create a healthy and peaceful environment for our daughter. Her reaction was a predictable mix of shock, denial, and outrage. She accused me of being brainwashed by my wife, of turning my back on my own family. She tried to guilt-trip me, to manipulate me, to make me feel like a terrible son. But this time, something was different. I didn't take the bait. I didn't get defensive. I simply reiterated our boundaries, calmly and firmly. I told her that the choice of whether or not to have a relationship with us was hers, but that any relationship would have to be on our terms. The conversation ended with her hanging up on me, and I was left with a profound sense of sadness and loss. The heartbreak of that moment was real, the severing of a lifelong bond. But it was also a moment of liberation. I had finally stood up for my wife, for my family, for myself. The risk I had taken was immense, but the sense of peace and clarity that followed was worth it. In the weeks that followed, there was a noticeable shift in our home. The tension that had been a constant presence began to dissipate, replaced by a sense of lightness and hope. My wife and I started to reconnect on a deeper level, to laugh more, to dream more. We started working on our finances together, creating a budget, tackling our debt with a renewed sense of purpose. We even started talking to our realtor again, not with a sense of desperation but with a sense of excitement and possibility. The real estate investment no longer felt like an impossible dream, but a tangible goal that we could work towards together. My mother, after a few weeks of silence, sent me a tentative text message, a simple "I love you." I replied, "I love you too." The path to reconciliation, if there is to be one, will be long and slow. It will require a fundamental shift in her behavior, a willingness to respect our boundaries. But for the first time, I feel like there is a possibility of a healthier, more honest relationship with her, one that is not based on obligation and guilt, but on mutual respect. The survival of my marriage is no longer in question. It has been tested by fire, and it has emerged stronger and more resilient. The sacrifice I made was a necessary one, a painful but ultimately redemptive act of love. The heartbreak of the past has given way to a future that is bright with promise. The ultimatum my wife gave me was not the end of our story, but the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter where we are the authors of our own destiny. The journey is far from over, but we are on the right path together. Thank you for listening this story. Please leave your thoughts in the comments. Click like and subscribe to the Reddit Whispers for more.